Hello, good day and welcome back to my channel. My name is Oluwatosin and this is So with Tosin in case you're coming across this channel for the first time. In today's video, you are going to be learning how to cut an Ankara pencil dress with a back slit with half cut and then with a princess dart bustier. Then we are going to be using this Ankara print and definitely with lining. We are going to be using cotton lining in this case. And moving ahead, this fabric is a 4 yards of fabric, and here are the basic measurements required when you want to cut a fitted dress like this. So we will be cutting the lower part of this dress first before proceeding to cutting the upper part of this dress. That means we are going to be cutting the pencil part of this dress first before proceeding to cutting the half cut of this dress. I hope that is clear. So moving ahead, guys, from these 4 yards of fabric, we have to know the quantity that will be enough to cut the lower part of the dress, maybe 2 yards, 1.5, 1 yard, whatever. And to figure that out, all you have to do is just check the highest measurement between the person's waist, the first hip, that's the skirt waist. You check the highest measurement between the person's waist, like round under bust waist, then the skirt waist, and then the hip. In most cases is the hip, but there are some few cases that it can happen to be the person's waist, maybe if the person is pregnant or people with very, very big tummy. So just check out for the highest measurement between those three measurements. After that, we need to add sewing allowance, and to add sewing allowance, you have to consider the kind of slits that you are going to put in this dress. Is this slit that is overlapping each other, or a slit that is not overlapping, is just there opened? So if you want a slit that is overlapping, just measure the hip plus 14 inches allowance. But if you want a slit that is not overlapping, just measure the hip plus 12 inches allowance. Guys, this 12 or 14 inches allowance includes allowance for sewing, for turning, for zip, for slit, for everything. Trust me, this method works perfectly every time. The hip plus either 12 or 14 inches allowance, depending on the kind of slit that you want at the back. And this method is cutting for front and back at the same time. To save time, most times when I'm cutting a piece like this, I cut for the front and the back at the same time so that I save as much time as possible. So guys, moving ahead, this person's hip is 49, so I'll just go ahead to measure 49, then I'll be adding 14 inches allowance, because the owner of this dress wants a slit to overlap each other, like to climb on each other. It's not slits that will open mouth down just like that. I hope you guys understand what I'm saying. So I'm just going to measure 49, which happens to be a hip, and then I'll be adding 14 inches allowance. So I'll measure that off camera, then I'll fold it and come back to show you guys what it's looking like. So guys, because in one of my previous videos I got a comment that somebody said that what I was saying wasn't looking like what I was folding, like the allowance I mentioned to add was not looking like what I was folding, like I added more allowance than what I said. That is why I'll still go ahead to remeasure this after bringing out the quantity I said would be enough, which is the hip plus the 14 inches allowance. And you know that most times the length, as long as it is Ankara you are using to cut a pencil long dress, the length is mostly the length of the Ankara. The only thing that will differ is if the person is a tall person, you might need to turn it inside. The turning will be small, like the Ankara that will go inside will be small. But if the person is a short person, the Ankara that you will turn inside will be big. So that's just the difference. So most times, the length is not always a problem. As long as it's a long dress and it's Ankara you're working on, like your fabric is Ankara. So this Ankara is just, the person is 59 and a half length is 17. So by the time I'm done, it's just to use lining to turn it inside a little. That's why I didn't really emphasize on the length. And this piece is on fold of 4. You know, when you want to cut front and back together for a dress, it has to be on fold of 4. So now I'm going to remeasure what I cut out from my 4 yards of Ankara, which is our hip, which is 49 divided by 4 gives us 12 and quarter. You know, This piece is on fold of 4 now. So when I mark my 12 1/4, what is remaining is supposed to be 3 1/2, which is times 4 is the 14 inches I mentioned, and what is remaining is exactly 3 1/2. So you guys see that that method works perfectly. You don't have to waste your material. That method works perfectly. So the next is just to push forward the front piece. Now, to know where, like, to know the quantity you are going to push forward now, all you have to do is still measure the hip divided by 4, which is 12 1/4, mark that, and add 2 inches allowance. You can use 1 inch, you can use 1 1/2, but in my case I love to use 2 inches allowance. So that is where I'm going to stop my fold. Like, that's the quantity I'll push forward from the old fabric I brought out. I hope I'm making sense. I hope what I'm saying is clear. So now the next thing is to start marking my measurements on my fabric. So go ahead to measure the person's waist divided by 4. Our waist is 41. I divided it by 4. I added 2 inches sewing allowance. Then from the waistline, I measure 5 inches downward. That is the inches between, that's like the gap between the waist and the first hip. The skirt hip, the skirt waist, which I personally call hip 1. I consider it anytime I'm sewing a fitted dress. I mentioned that anytime I'm making a tutorial on how to sew something fitted. So our hip 1 divided by 4 plus 2 inches sewing allowance. Then from that 5, measure 4 inches downward, and on that point measure our hip divided by 4 plus 2 inches sewing allowance. The next thing is you have to, like, consider how fitted you want the lower part of the dress to be, since it's a pencil dress and this person doesn't want it too fitted. So I'm just going to deduct 5 inches from our hip, which happens to be 49. I'll be deducting 5, so I'll be using 44. I'll divide that by 4 and then add 2 inches sewing allowance. So the next thing is to connect my points together. Allowance points, guys, not the actual measurement point, the allowance point. And then I pick up my straight ruler and connect that to the lower part of the dress. I connect it to the pencil part of the dress, just like I'm doing. After that, the next thing is to determine where the slit is going to start from. So in this case, she doesn't want the slit too long at all, and her full length is 59 and half length is 17. So I'm just going to put my 17 up, just like I'm doing in the video. And because she doesn't want the slit opened that much, I'm going to be marking 39. 39 is where her slit is going to start from. So I'll just put a mark at that 39. And from that 39 upward, I'm going to mark out my zip allowance of 1.5 inch from there, and then I'll go ahead to cut it out just like I'm doing. And on the other side too, I mean the shaping side, I'll go ahead to cut out that too. And after cutting it out, this is what I have. The next thing is to transfer this to my lining, and for this we are going to be cutting separately. I mean for front and for back separately, not like the way we cut front and back together when we were cutting the Ankara. So I'm starting with the back. Just place it, and I made sure it's 3 inches shorter so that I can turn it inside with 1.5 inch, and then just go ahead to cut that out. Do the same thing to the front panel. Place it on lining, let it be 3 inches shorter. No, I use 3 inches, depends on the length of wherever you are sewing for. Then go ahead to cut that out as well. So for the upper bodies now, this is the half cut and this is the front piece. I already brought it out. Guys, I have a detailed video on my channel on how to cut a princess that bustier. If you need more explanation on this, you can check out that video. I'll put the link up somewhere or in the description box below. So I'm gonna have to bring out the lining and the actual fabric because I don't want to waste time. I'll be cutting the lining and the Ankara at the same time. So the next is to mark a nipple to nipple plus half inch. A nipple to nipple divided by 2 plus half inch allowance for joining, and then go ahead to connect that into a straight line Then from that point, measure 2.5 inch forward. I'm using 2.5 because she's busty. Her bust is 46. If it's somebody that her bust is not up to 35 and she's an adult, just use 2. And anybody that her bust is more than like 50, just use 3 at that point. The next is to measure shoulder to nipple, under nipple to nipple line, then shoulder to under her bust. All of these measurements with half inch allowance. And then the 2.5 inches that you drew the other time, just connect it upward up to under her bust and go ahead to draw a cup, like just mark out the cup. And then on the cup, 5 inches downward, measure on that 5 inch, measure 1 inch forward, backward, and go ahead to cut it out. Like I said, I have a detailed video that explains this a lot. So guys, at this point, I'm not going to be removing the neckline or the armhole because of the way I want to achieve my style. So this is the back piece now. Measure the zipper allowance of 1.5 inch, nipple to nipple divided by 4 plus half-inch sewing allowance, and then just go ahead to cut that out as well. We are still not going to remove the neckline or the armhole for the back piece as well. We are going to pad it, join it back first before bringing it back to remove the neckline and the armhole and whatever it is we want to do to it. Actually guys, this style is a dress that has yoke and a pencil sleeve, and in my next video we are going to be sewing this dress. So if you would be interested in learning how to sew this as well, watch out for my next video. And please, if you find this video helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. If you have any question, let me know in the comment section, and please share my video as much as you can among your soulmates. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye.